Travis Hunter, you are a Cleveland Brown. At least it feels like that's going to be the case. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. After the weekend, it sure sounds like Travis Hunter will be the Browns pick at number 2 overall. It's a mock draft Monday. I'll unveil a new 7-round mock draft for you here today and the best third-round options for the Cleveland Browns. We get into all that and more. But first, I do want to thank you for being an everyday with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you will find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well. And it's totally free to you. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, and of course, to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every day. I do also want to thank our sponsor, the Monarch Money, who this brings you this episode. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And yes, all of a sudden, after a roller coaster of an offseason and pre-draft process, we have gone full. I mean, roller coaster is the best way to describe it. There's been numerous ups and downs, from the Browns have to take a quarterback to maybe they're not going to take a quarterback to I'd be surprised if they don't take a quarterback to, you know what, maybe they don't feel that great about quarterback. Now it's going to be Abdul Carter. And we spent a couple weeks talking about Abdul Carter being the pick, to the point where now, after the Browns' presence at Colorado's not hard to find showcase, or NFL showcase, which is really just a pro day, a fancy way to say pro day, it feels like momentum has shifted towards the Browns actually taking Travis Hunter at number 2 instead of Abdul Carter. And I've already pleaded my case for why Hunter should be the pick if the team is sort of deciding between or torn between the two non-quarterbacks at the top of the board, Hunter and Carter. I think you should go with Hunter for a couple different reasons, and I'll relitigate those here for you here in a second. Before I get into the possibility of trading back up for Shedeur Sanders, which I've talked about a little bit, but as I've thought about that more and more, it feels less and less likely. So the reason I am team Hunter over Carter, and I didn't feel this way at the beginning of this process. Like, after hearing Andrew Berry said that he thought Travis Hunter was more of a receiver, I ruled it out. Like, I was just like, they're not taking Travis Hunter. There's no chance. They're not going to take somebody they think is a wide receiver at 2 when they have other bigger needs, when there's maybe different talent available there. I didn't think it was going to happen. But now that I've thought about it more, heard Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski talk about it more, saw how active they were at Colorado's Pro Day, which, I think is both them doing their due diligence and trying to see if somebody wants to maybe trade up and give them some capital to go somewhere else on the board. We'll see. There's always a little bit of posturing kind of going on when you make that grand of an appearance at somebody's pro day. But I do think they really like Travis Hunter. I think they like both Colorado players. And the reason I lean Hunter over Carter now, despite my feelings early on in this process, is there's a couple things here. The playing both sides of the ball thing is too intriguing not to, like, if you're deciding between those two guys, take the guy that can do multiple things for you. That's more versatile, that can play defense if you need him, but that you also want on the offensive side of the ball, because this team needs a wide receiver. And if he can bring that to the table, be that number 2 wideout for you with alongside Jerry Jeudy, like, why the hell not, right? Like, I like the idea that it fills a need, but then also, as this team's time with Greg Newsome likely comes to an end, either via trade before the season starts, or he's just going to play out this last year of his contract and then be a free agent. Now you have like another guy you can go to, or if MJ Emerson struggles, you have another corner that you can sort of turn to put out there in certain spots, or maybe he becomes a full-time corner if you get another receiver later. I don't know what the full plan would be, but I like the idea of the versatility there. And let's face it, like, the Browns are an analytics-driven organization. Getting a player who can do multiple things and is an athletic freak that can do multiple things for you is something that just feels too good to be true for an organization that operates the way that the Browns do. So I think that's the first thing. I also think like the conversations that have come up about Carter, like there's been a lot more talk lately that he's like this generational talent, and that term gets thrown around too loosely, I think, these days, especially this time of year. I don't think this draft has anybody that is like a slam dunk, can't miss, generational talent, whatever the phrase you want to use is. Like I think back to 2017, Myles Garrett was a foregone conclusion. Like if you take him, you're making the perfect choice, the right choice for your team. And I think the Browns, that's the reason they passed on a quarterback that year, right? Because it was like, well, hey, we can get this generational player in Myles Garrett, and that's obviously come to fruition. He is a generational talent. There are every so often there are drafts that have those players. Sometimes it's a quarterback, sometimes it's something different. This year, I don't know that we have that. And so if you're deciding between the two, I think Hunter's probably a little closer to the generational player tab, if for nothing else, because he has a chance to be like the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL and like completely change the game if he's actually able to pull off playing both ways. And if the Browns let him play both ways, which I would imagine if you're drafting him, you're going to let him play both ways. But everybody now is saying that that's where the Browns are at. Tom McShay said something about it after he reported that the Titans had basically canceled their private workout with Shador and Travis. Like they were like, yeah, we're good, which basically tells you, okay, we're locked into Cam Ward. We don't need to see these guys in another round of these guys. And so good luck to you. And so that sets the stage now for the Browns to probably take somebody like Travis Hunter. And it does feel like that's the way things are going. Tom McShay wasn't the only one. There were some other reports over the weekend that that's where their head's at. You had the comments from Dion on Friday saying that he believes one of those guys is going to end up in Cleveland. So it feels like the stars are kind of aligning here for Travis Hunter to end up a Cleveland Brown. I'm all for it. I like it. Now, I've talked about and floated the idea of the Browns trading back up to get Shador Sanders if he falls out of the top 10 into the teens or the 20s. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more far-fetched it sounds. Like he would have to fall until I think like the mid-20s for the Browns to even consider trading back up for him. Because here's the thing, like if you're going to trade back up for him, you're not going to trade back up for him in the top 10. A, because of asking praise, but B, like if you have a top 10 grade on him, you should take him 2 anyway. If you have a top 15, maybe even 20 grade on him, you should take him number 2 anyway, because you always have to draft quarterbacks. And so, or you always have to overdraft quarterbacks, sorry. And so like the first teams that come to mind after that are like the Steelers at 21. So you have to jump them. How do you get to 20? People are just, I remind people, the draft value charts where it gives you like the pick value and like what it would cost to move around the board if you were to trade up or down. It's just a guide. It is only strictly a guide of like what these values could be. Usually when teams are trading back up, it's going to take a lot more than people think to get up to a certain spot. Like trading from 33 even to 20 might take a future first or a future second on top of like your second round of this year, at least one of your thirds this year, maybe both. Like it's going to be a haul to get back up into the top 20, even the top, like even 10 spots or 13 spots up is going to cost you something pretty significant, because you're going to have to give up a haul to get there, to get above 20 or earlier. And even to get to 20, it might cost you something more than what people actually realize it's going to cost you. That's just the nature of doing business. When you're trading for a quarterback, teams will try to fleece you for it. So I don't know that the Browns are going to be aggressive in that way to do something like that, especially considering, Jimmy Haslam on top of alluding to the idea that they're going to be patient with figuring out the quarterback position. He also alluded to the idea that they have to get this draft right. He didn't allude to it. He said it. Like they know they got to get this draft right. It's a very important draft for the future of this team. And so they need picks. They need to pick players. They need to get players in that building. They can't afford to like give up a bunch of draft capital just to get one position figured out, even if it is the quarterback position and it's the most important one. Like if they love Shador enough, they'll take him at 2. If they don't, I think they're probably going to take their chances with somebody like Jalen Milroe later on, and that'll be that. So we'll see. But it would take Shador falling into the 20s at least for them to, I think about it. And I don't know if he gets that far. I don't know if he gets to the mid-20s, which would be like more so striking distance. I think that they would consider it. I could see the Steelers taking him, whether they end up with Aaron Rodgers or not. Or I could see another team maybe being more willing to trade up and get him. Maybe the Giants would be more willing to trade up and get him after maybe passing on him at 3. And that's if they even pass on him at 3. But the teams I'm keeping my eye on in regards to Shedeur, if he falls, are the Giants, obviously, the Saints, even the Jets to an extent, and then the Steelers at 20 are the first one that's like beyond the top 10 that kind of feels like it could happen. Or maybe even the Colts. I've thrown the Colts out there because are they really sold on Anthony Richardson? I don't know. So they're like 15, I think they're picking. But either way, those are some of the teams that I have my eyes on. But I mentioned Jalen Milroe's name during that conversation. Speaking of Jalen Milroe, does he end up with the Browns in my first 7-round mock draft of the offseason? I unveil it to you on a mock draft Monday right here on the Locked On Browns podcast. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get your taxes done as soon as today. A TurboTax expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on real progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now that is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Today's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work and taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. At Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver things we all need, from aerospace to electrical and medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes, that's easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global vision, we'll equip you with the right tools to move forward. Think ahead and lead the way, because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at www.easierwithepicor.com. That's www.easierwithepicor.com. All right, so it is a mock draft Monday. For the first time, I did a full 7-rounder with the Cleveland Browns as my team, picking every single player. And this draft ended up being kind of interesting for me because as much as I have talked about trading up into the first round to take another player and get 5 years on him, I sort of chose this time around to stay put. And so what's interesting was I kind of went into this mock thinking, if Shedeur Sanders falls, I'll try to swing a trade to get up and get him like in the 20s or something like that. That was kind of my thought process on it. He didn't end up falling. I think he actually went to the Giants at 3 in this one, or the Jets at 7. One of those teams took him. And so he ends up in New York regardless. And so my quarterback choices became, much different sort of later on in this process. But I think you guys are going to like who I got at 33. You can guess who I took at 1 because I just talked about it with Travis Hunter. But I think you're going to love who I got at 33 because it was a player who falls and he's there. And I said I couldn't pass it up. But this is how the mock draft sort of panned out here for me in my 7-rounder that I did here leading into the week. And so, yes, Travis Hunter goes number 2 overall to me. And then at 33, as much as it might surprise people, because as much as this is a really good running back class, so obviously I think waiting makes some sense. But at the same time, I also do think that if the right player's there, you take them. And Amari and Hampton has been skyrocketing up draft boards to the point where like some people think he probably might go in the first round actually. And so the board sort of fell in a way where like he was one of, if not the top ranked player still left on the board when I was on the clock at 33 and I didn't trade up at all. And so I said, you know what? I'm pulling the trigger and I'm taking Amari and Hampton. 33rd overall, which honestly isn't that crazy. The Browns took Nick Chubb at 35 overall when he obviously was drafted in 2018. So it's only 2 picks off of that. It's not completely far-fetched. And it worked out where I end up with a stellar running back to go with my now receiver that I drafted in Travis Hunter. And then I again sort of stuck around, didn't make any trades, stayed put at 67. And that's where I finally get the quarterback in Jalen Milroe. Now, you know, at this point, having listened to me enough, I am not a big fan of Jalen Milroe. Not a big Jalen Milroe fan. Don't really think I don't want the Browns to really end up with him, but I also feel like it's almost inevitable that they will end up with him, and the Tommy Reese connection's there and all those different things. So it feels like this will end up being one of the quarterbacks they're considering later on, if not at 33. In this instance, he falls. He's available in the 3rd round when I'm on the clock, and so I pulled the trigger and said, fine. Took him at 67. I think the value at that point is fine for the athlete that he is. You might as well take a chance. In this instance, with how this draft sort of shakes out, and you'll notice I get another quarterback later, but with how this draft shakes out, I said, all right, fine. I will take my chances with Jalen Milroe for a 3rd rounder and basically hope that I can land Kirk Cousins after the draft. That's kind of how this came about. And so this is where I ended up. So I take Milroe at 67. That leads me to Kamon Rucker as an edge rusher at 94. Trying to go defense finally and address that need. Defensive line is pretty deep in this draft, so I felt like that was a pretty good value for him at that place. And then with 104, the first 5 picks in the top 104 picks, that's where I snagged Harold Fannin Jr., who I think that's a pretty good spot for him. I think his average draft place is somewhere around the early 100s. So, a good story, Canton kid, chance to come to Cleveland right up the road, and he ends up in Cleveland as you address another need at tight end. So a lot of offense here in the early going. Granted, you get Travis Hunter who can play both ways, and you get Rucker who obviously is an edge for you. But offense are some of this team's biggest needs. So it makes sense that they would prioritize some offense. And then you don't pick again until 179 because they don't have a 5th round pick. And that's where I ended up with Emory Jones Jr., finally go tackle out of LSU. I got a decent grade for that pick. I think he's a pretty good, like if you're looking tackle later, he's a pretty good value there. And then I get a second quarterback in Tyler Shuck at 192, also in the 6th round, one of those 3 6-rounders that the Browns have. And this feels like it's something that could happen. It feels like it could play out that the Browns end up taking 2 quarterbacks. I talked last week on Friday about the idea that the Browns aren't ignoring Tyler Shuck. They did have him in for a pre-draft visit as one of their top 30 visits already. So I think there's a chance they could take him. And again, 6th round at this point, he was there. Why not? Get yourself another quarterback. And this falls in line with Andrew Berry's comments that the room could skew younger. You get 2 rookies in here with a chance to compete. If plan A is still Kirk Cousins, maybe you land him, and then you got him to sort of lead the way for Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shuck, and you see what can kind of happen there. I don't hate that setup in the grand scheme of things. You're taking more bites at the apple. I can live with that, even though I don't love Milroe, and you kind of just keep it moving here, and you kind of go into it with a couple young guys at quarterback. And then I rounded things out with all my picks in the 200s, 2 more 6-rounders that I have. Ty Robinson, defensive interior or defensive line from Nebraska. Nebraska had a really good defensive line last year, so some value there for him, even though I didn't get the best grade from PFF for what it's worth. And then Jimmy Horn, wide receiver out of Colorado, double dipping on Colorado players and UNC players in this draft. And then just for sort of good measure, Browns do need some safety help. So I took Jordan Hancock as my last pick, 254 in the 7th round. He was still available. Maybe that's a position they addressed a little bit earlier. I could see that happening, but I liked the way that shook out. I liked the players I ended up with. I'm gonna be honest. If you try to get on me for taking Omari and Hampton at 33, I will push back because I think the value there is great. And if he gets to that point and the Browns, we know, need a running back, you should probably pull the trigger. I've kind of been operating under the assumption that he won't be there because I think someone's going to take him in the 1st round. But if he's there at 33, you absolutely take him, in my opinion. So I liked the way that shook out. You get the 2 quarterbacks, even though I don't love Milroe. And I do think in this scenario, my mind did go to Kirk Cousins is the quarterback you end up with. Kirk Cousins is the guy you get after the draft. He's your starter, and you sort of bridge the gap and see what you can do until you can maybe get a better quarterback next year. But in the meantime, you got to sort of project quarterbacks that you can sort of see what they can bring to the table this season. Now, does that should that temper expectations for what they do in next year's draft in terms of the quarterback position? Maybe, but I do think the Browns understand, especially given what Jimmy Haslam said, what others have said, that they have to get that position figured out. So if they really don't think Milroe or Shuck are going to, be that guy next year, I don't think it behooves them, or sorry, not behooves them. I don't think it prevents them or roadblocks them in any way from ending up pulling the trigger on another quarterback next year. If they're at the top of the board or they need to trade up to get one, I think they'll do that if they find the right guy, because they know they got to get that position figured out. And I don't know if either of those guys are the answer, but it at least gives you some young potential to invest in long term. What do you think of my 7-round mock draft? First one I've done here this offseason. We got 2 weeks until the draft, so I'll do 2 more. I'll do one for next Monday and the Monday leading into the draft, and we'll see if anything I predict comes to be true. But in the meantime, let me know your thoughts in the comment section right here at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Speaking of the Browns draft options, I got asked a question from a fan last week about the best options for the Browns in the 3rd round, players that they could be targeting in that area of the draft board. I got some answers for you. We'll break it down coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start actually building wealth. Take advantage of their all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever as well. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Make sure you use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Get your finances in order with Monarch Money. All right, so we got through our mock draft on this Mock Draft Monday. Again, let me know your thoughts on anybody that I took. And what I think is interesting, as I got this question on Friday about Thursday leading into Friday, as I always like to put out there that I'm looking for fan questions for a Fan Friday. And somebody asked me, and I thought it was a good question, who are some of the best options for the Browns in the 3rd round? We know they have 2 third-round picks. There are a number of directions they could go just based off of what happens with their first 2 picks. As you saw with my first 2 picks, I ended up with Travis Hunter and Amari Hampton, and so I went quarterback in the 3rd round. And that could be the way that it plays out, and they take a quarterback 3rd round, and that's kind of how things fall. But if things go differently, if they trade up for Shedeur Sanders, or if they just ignore a quarterback for a while and wait for Tyler Shuck in the 4th round or whatever, however things could fall, will obviously change the plans of what the Browns could do in the 3rd round. But I do think there are some real options for them in that area of the board that could make some sense. And I'm going to sort of go through a few of the ones here that I've circled as potential options that fit needs that the Browns have. I think first and foremost, I just want to get these guys out of the way early. Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Isaiah Bond out of Texas. If any of those 3 guys are available, they're very much in play. Isaiah Bond, speedy receiver, again, position of need. Now, if they take Travis Hunter, receiver probably gets wiped out as something that because they consider him a receiver, that they take in these top 100, like the first 104 picks, where they have 5 picks. They probably don't take somebody like Isaiah Bond if they take Travis Hunter. So keep that in mind, obviously. Any receivers I name in this conversation, probably out of the equation if they take Travis Hunter. But running back, there's a lot of variance on what the Browns should do when it comes to running back, when they should draft one in a very deep class. Taking one at 33 may feel like a reach to some. So if you wait, if Henderson falls at all into the 3rd, if Caleb Johnson falls at all into the 3rd, or even the late 2nd, and you're like, let's get back up from 67 and get a little closer here and get one of these guys, I could see that happening. But those are two guys I would pay attention to. Caleb Johnson ran a very similar like outside zone offense. He'd be a perfect fit for Stefanski's offense. Trayvon Henderson has a chance to be really, really special. I still love Quinshon Judkins, but I think he's going to probably go like mid-second round, and I don't know if the Browns are going to overdraft him at 33. So I don't know that they end up with him, even though I love him. He's been my draft crush for this entire process. Another wide receiver option to keep in mind, again, just based on what they do. If they go Abdul Carter, they could still take wide receiver. But Jalen Noel, wide receiver out of Iowa State, he run a 4.3 40. Really good footwork. He runs his routes he's a very strong route runner. He has some nice acceleration. And his alignment versatility, like being able to go from different positions, is something that stands out. But he also has a lot of drops. 7.2 career drop rate isn't great. So again, third round feels like a place where he probably goes. And, he sometimes lets guys get a little too physical with him at the line of scrimmage. So there's some knocks there. But again, he fits the billing of what you would expect from a third round pick. And he could be in play again just based off of what happens at 2, if the Browns go Travis Hunter or not. If they don't, he could be in the mix. Dylan Sampson, running back out of Tennessee, more likely that he is available in the third round than even Johnson or Henderson, as I alluded to earlier. He's really quick, 4.440. He's got really good burst. He's really good at being patient and zone read, decision-making type run schemes. He's a good blocker in the pass game and can do some nice things. He is a little undersized at 190 pounds. He lost 4 fumbles in 2024, so that's a little bit concerning as well. And he doesn't have a lot of experience as a wide receiver, like a pass catcher. So those are some knocks on his game, but I do think he's a player that the Browns could be considering in the third round if they wait on running back. Josiah Stewart, edge out of Michigan. Again, if they don't go Abdul Carter, if they take Travis Hunter, maybe they prioritize offense. You could go offensive line at 33. You could go quarterback at 33. You could go running back at 33. Now maybe they get to the third round. They're like, all right, now we got to go defense. Let's get an edge to pair with Myles Garrett. And Stewart out of Michigan, we know how good that Michigan defensive line was. I saw it firsthand at the Michigan-Ohio State game, and especially being a Ohio State fan, I witnessed it in person. They were a really good group all year. He's got an explosive first step, really good with his hands, and he has a number of pass rush moves that he can win with. He has a little bit of an undersized frame and below average arm length. But again, third round pick, right? You're going to get guys at this point that has some flaws, but have a lot of upside. And I think that's what you'd be getting with somebody like Josiah Stewart, who has some potential to be good. Cameron Williams, offensive tackle to Texas, really good power with his initial punch. He's still working on his kick technique. He's got some impressive mobility for being his size, and he's really good in pass protection. Struggles to maintain leverage at times in the run game, so his pass blocking is really good. His run blocking needs some work. Again, unfinished products. But the biggest thing with Williams is that we know the Browns need a left tackle, and Williams would basically be like a Jed Wills type experiment. He's a right tackle. You'd be moving him to left to try to see what he can do. And I don't know if the Browns want to do that or not and try that experiment again, because this is the regime that drafted Jed Wills, and that didn't work out very well for them. So we'll see what they think about it. But he could be in play here if you wait on tackle. Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas, another Texas guy. Really good hands when it comes to catching the ball, really good body control, really good route runner as well. He lacks sort of some of the play strength of a traditional tight end position. He does need to expand his route tree, and he needs to get better as a blocker, particularly like just where he has his hands, what he does. But that's something I think he can work on at the next level and improve. But he's somebody who could be in play if they want to go tight end. Another wide receiver, I'll wrap up with this one. Tez Johnson out of Oregon. Slower 40 time, just a 4.5, but he's pretty crafty with his route running, sort of in the same way Jerry Jeudy is. He's got some good acceleration, and he's proven that he can be productive in different types of offenses. He is extremely light in terms of like his durability. He's only like 160 pounds, so that's not ideal. And that's the reason why he's a guy that's being mocked in like the third round of drafts. But again, wide receiver might not even be in play if you take Travis Hunter at 2 anyway. But those are just some of the names that I think make sense. Maybe there's some others out there that I missed. And if you have somebody you think could be an option, throw it in the comments. We'll try to talk about it on the show. But plenty still to come this week with, again, just over 2 weeks out now from the NFL draft. It is going to be hot and heavy over the next couple weeks, getting you ready for what the Browns are going to do at number 2. It feels like the draft really starts with them. And now that we all understand that the Tennessee Titans are pretty much locked to take Cam Ward, the Browns are sort of the big wild card here, where everyone's attention is turning. So what do they do? Who are they going to take? Is it going to be Travis Hunter? We'll see if that conversation changes at all over the next couple weeks. And I encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up on these conversations with Locked On Browns. Make us your first listen every single day. And don't forget to make your second listen something else from the network. Locked On NFL Draft Show. You can keep it local. Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thank you, as always, for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.